IVM.
$100. That's all it takes to begin your journey with Bitcoin and Ethereum. No, really. With CoinSwitch, you can start investing in over 100 cryptocurrencies with just 100 rupees. On top of that, there are zero charges for deposits and withdrawals, so you can trade, buy, sell, however and whenever you want. All of this, plus their extremely intuitive interface, makes CoinSwitch the perfect app for beginners in the crypto space. But don't take my word for it. Just download CoinSwitch for free and try it out for yourself. If you'd like more information on cryptocurrencies, tune into a show about crypto with me, Rohan Joshi, my new adventure on IVM podcasts. CoinSwitch, kuch to badlega.
Hey everyone, welcome to Shunya One, episode 164. We're doing this a little differently today. Amit, how have you been? How's it going?
I've been good, man. It's been a interesting couple
all
of
safe,
weeks.
all okay?
It's so far so good. I mean, like it's been challenging. It's been a thing, but so far so good.
You are in the office still, in the studio. Isn't it like,
so
has Omicron not entered the studio walls?
So Omicron,
I'm glad if it hasn't, man.
I don't know if it has entered the studio walls. If it has, it's gone away. I hope at least. But we've had some issues. I mean, like there are people on the team who have been hit with the positive. So coming to office is entirely at people's discretion. But the call that we made was essentially, if you want to come, I don't want to shut the office for you.
Sure.
Right. So the thought was that, I mean, like for a lot of people, working out of home is really difficult, small houses, et cetera, et cetera. So just if you want to come, the office is open. If you don't want to come, no stress, no pressure. We're about 8 people in, I think, today out of what would normally be about 25, 30. So
I've been hearing like crazy, like people getting exposed for no reason, no idea whatsoever.
So
it's just nuts.
So
and I'm doubting every itchy throat I have. I'm like, shit, it's finally got me.
Because the thing is that it's, from what I'm understanding, like 20-25% of people who are getting it are symptomatic. So, I mean, like, if that's the case, nobody knows, off. Right? I mean, like, I might have it right now. I just don't know I have it because,
holy crap.
I'm not feeling sick. But who knows, man? It's, hey,
Save up on tests.
Save up on the tests, yes. But the one silver lining coming out of all of this right now at this point, and nobody knows if this is true because early days, et cetera, right? But this is that the fact
might
that
just normalize it a little bit.
Yeah, it's a mild infection which is spreading rapidly, right? This is generally how pandemics end. So let's just hope that is the case.
Hope for the best. And today, interesting conversation we are having today is that we are having a massive sciencey conversation
with somebody who's like trying to change the world, like
exactly.
For real, like not like the person making a fashion app was trying to change the world, but like for real change the world. This is
exactly like short of solving a pandemic. This is probably one of the other crises that you can probably solve in the world today, which is the energy crisis, and that's something we're going to talk about today. We're going to be speaking with Vijay who's the co-founder and CEO of deMITasse Energy. And he's going to talk to us about some very, very cool science and tech. I mean, half the episode, I was like, I have to read up on this. I have to take notes on that. I have to revisit this. It's going to give you guys a lot to look up.
I was never so conscious of the fact that I really don't have a science education, but I think I kind of fake it pretty well most of the times, but never so conscious of the fact as I was today.
Well, let's go into it without scaring listeners off. Take a quick
it was
break.
Fun. It was great.
And come back and listen to this very, very fun, interesting episode.
Namaste, this is Cyrus Brocha. I am part of the government cancel culture program to remove rubbish off all the different streams available. So what we have is all the collected rubbish we put together on our show. It's called Cyrus Says. It's on IVM podcast. You have to watch it and listen to it. It's on our app. It's on our website. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Facebook. There are many different ways. Don't bother me and ask me how. You have to find out. We talk to different personalities. Many of them are known. Some are just people we meet downstairs and invite them up for chai. But the point is, it's fun and it's very therapeutic. So please join in and listen to Cyrus Says.
Hey Vijay, welcome to Shunya One. It's so good to see you. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing well. Thanks for being on our show. And of course, you are a very unique entrepreneur who's come to our show, because we usually have, well, regular tech folks is what I can say, who come and talk to us about technology we all interact with every day, either on apps or on our phones or in some or the other way at a consumer level. But you're doing something which is a whole different thing. So tell us about your, a little bit of maybe background on who you are personally and what led you to, the journey of deMITasse Energy.
So I'm just a regular Joe. I'm just another engineer. India's full of engineers. So I come from a naval background. My dad was an engineer in the Indian Navy. So I sort of had the fortunate sort of luck of being all across India, traveling India, learning a lot of Indian culture, looking at a lot of solutions that different cultures solve the same problem with. So I come from a family who had huge respect for science and math. So from a very young age, I've sort of been pushed towards science and mathematics and stuff. So instead of reading Enid Blyton or such, I grew up with Bernoulli's theorem. So so that's how I grew up. I grew up fairly like in a normal school, naval public school. Grew up to become an engineer. Again, typically, I was very interested in the aerospace engineering because my dad was an aerospace engineer, I guess. But I ended up as an electrical engineer. My dad was unfortunately more into electrical than I was. So he suggested electrical is a better idea. I got in there. I was fortunate enough to have friends in college who were really interested in doing good stuff, solving important problems. And so we started picking up problems that really need to be solved and for some reason were not solved. Things like in Uttarakhand, right? You've got villages which are in remote areas and therefore they don't have electricity. And it was beyond us that we are sort of on our way to moving humanity from Earth to Mars, but we can't power a small village in Uttarakhand. So we came up with this design of a dam, a small hydropower plant, SHP. Obviously, we come from a very almost communist backgrounds where our parents are all government is this, government is that. So we ended up at MNRE and we're like, this is the design. Why don't we go ahead and build dams? And MNRE was, let's not do that. If you're interested, you do it. The economics doesn't work. And that was a sort of a letdown. We're like, why would you not do this? We understand this transmission loss and all, but if a village had a small dam which could use a stream of water without having a huge head or high velocity, why would you not do that? And so these are the sort of experiences we've had, and we realized the only way to solve, or if not solve, do good things, good engineering, or put engineering to good use, was by starting our own company and actually solving something. And that's how we started. We started back this company back in 2011 when as a very small project, we wanted to power basically wheelchairs because electric wheelchairs were very expensive back then. Lithium ion wasn't what it is today. And it was more of a luxury. And we thought it would be a good idea if we could power an electric wheelchair with a small engine, which was not combusting fuel. And therefore, you could bring it into hospitals. You can use it inside your house without really having smoke all over the place. And
sorry, just 1 second here, right? I mean, like from what I understood, you've so far spoken about two different types of energy solutions, none of which are power plants. Right? So what do you guys do? Right? My understanding from what the bio I got was that this is a company that facilitates efficiencies in power plants.
Right.
That's what. So
I think he's getting there.
Yeah,
it's small. It's building up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So fast forward from there, we ended up trying to make electric wheelchairs, but we now build power plants, which have
that escalated.
Escalated very quickly. So we build power plants that has two benefits over existing power plants. One, it is extremely efficient. Typically, your power plants have efficiencies of about 32-34%. Your supercritical power plants go to 38%, 40-42%. That's just about it.
Wow.
And our power plants tend to have a round trip efficiency of about 70-75% already. And we expect it to go to 80%. The second problem that it solves, which currently is unsolved today with today's technology, is that we can store energy. We can store energy for very long duration and very efficiently. So you may have lithium-ion batteries today and various other types of electrochemical batteries, but they store a little bit of energy for a very short duration of time. You can't store grid-scale power for days together. So we can do that, and these are the two aspects of our technology that helps us stand apart.
Okay,
Wow.
so if I could ask, right, the kinds of what kind of power plants are they? Are they gas? Are they coal? Are they
Hydro.
hydroelectric, solar, wind? What are they?
Our power plants?
Yeah.
So ours is a thermal power plant essentially, but we do not combust fuel technically. We use waste heat. So you've got waste heat in industries. India typically loses about 20,000 megawatt hour of energy every year. So we essentially tap that into that thermal energy, and we generate electricity using that.
Oh, wow.
So that is one. There is a second aspect where we combine forces with existing renewable plants. You've got solar, you've got wind, and you have off-peak electricity that they generate. Essentially, electricity that is being generated when the grid does not require. So typically, because they're not baseload generators, they're switched off or they're pushed off the grid, which basically is which is revenue loss for them, right? So
Right.
we partner with them and we let them operate continually, and we use that energy, we store it, and when the grid operates during peak demand, that's when we power the power grid. And
Wow.
for example, if it's night time, you don't need a solar plant operating, then we can power that. This is essentially what our energy source is.
Those are the two business models, but it also that sounds like there's a massive layer of tech underneath all of this, right? So what is that core, I would say, invention or innovation that you guys actually stumbled upon? Like, you made it sound easy that it went from wheelchair to power plant, but
Right.
how did you start, like, going down this path? And what were those incremental innovations, if you can tell us?
Right. So if I start again with the wheelchair idea, one, it is technically a very bad idea because no one's going to fund you. When we started off, our ask was 5 lakh bucks, and every investor we met was like, "Dude, ask your dad probably. He'll give you 5 lakh. We can't fund you 5 lakh." So we were very naive, but the idea we wanted was to use waste heat from any sources, and if you plug it into a heater, for example, it could heat the engine. We could store that thermal energy, and over a period of time, you could reuse it. We soon realized that does not work very well. It needs much high temperatures and stuff. So what we essentially stumbled upon incrementally is that current technologies, whether it be power plants or industrial units, they're very inefficient. So typically a Rankine cycle, which powers all your thermal power plants, may it be powered by coal, by gas, by nuclear, whatever it might be. If you're boiling steam, it uses Rankine cycle or a variant of it. The problem is you're going to give it a lot of energy. You bring it to 300 degrees Celsius and about 60 bar pressure, and you only end up using about 30% of that energy. A vast majority of it, more than 70%, is given out in cooling towers. And you can't use that energy because that's essentially heat of vaporization. And it is low-grade thermal energy, by which we mean something that the temperature of that exhaust steam is below 80, 90 degrees Celsius. So the technology, doesn't really exist, which can viably absorb that energy. And therefore, it's very inefficient. So what we realized is these mechanical systems, same thing with compressors. If you go with ORCs, which uses compressors instead of cooling towers, they also lose a lot of energy, more than
What
70%.
What is an ORC? I think I've
Organic Rankine
lost.
cycle, organic Rankine cycle, which is essentially a Rankine cycle, but it uses organic molecules instead of water.
Okay, you should explain that science too, because I don't think too many people have
I didn't
heard of
get it,
Rankine
so
cycle
yeah, I'm pretty
at
sure.
all.
Okay, so I'll rotate back to that, but to end this line of thought. So these systems are inherently very energy inefficient. You do need a heat sink, and therefore you will lose that energy. So what we realize is we need a different system, which is probably not mechanical. Mechanical systems inherently lose a lot of energy. The best example is solar photovoltaics. They don't have any mechanical parts, and that's why they're so effective. So over a period of time, we tried out a lot of other ideas, and the best idea we could come up with was chemical systems. So chemical reactions inherently are very efficient. Combustion, for example, converting chemical bonds, energy in chemical bonds to thermal energy is very efficient. Just that mechanically using that heat becomes a nightmare. So if you could have chemical systems which could do the mechanical bit, that would end up being very efficient. So we essentially did exactly that. Now we use chemical and catalytic processes to essentially absorb the working fluid that has expanded after the turbine. It expands, and you use a condenser or compressor to reliquefy the entire gas so that the cycle can be repeated all over again. So instead of using mechanical systems, we use chemical systems. And they give us both these properties of A, storing energy, because it can be a batch process, and B, efficiency gain. So now if I could just very quickly explain the Rankine cycle, so that makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
So typically in the industry, what we do today, be it nuclear, be it thermal, in whatever case, if there is steam involved in the system, you have a Rankine cycle or a variation of it. So in that, you essentially start with water. In case of ORC, it could be some other molecule as well, but it's usually liquid. You provide heat to it, or essentially energy, and you make it a gas. You make it a high pressure gas, essentially. And that gas is then run to a turbine. The turbine is turned with the gas, high-speed gas, and that mechanical motion is then given to an alternator, which then makes
generates current. Yeah.
The problem now with primarily Rankine cycle is turbines are high-speed machines. So at that velocity, if you've got droplets coming in, they'll start corroding your turbine blades, corroding, eroding both. So we typically make it superheated, which essentially means bringing water to 300 degrees Celsius and about 60 bar pressure. So that is dry steam. It does not have any droplets. It's essentially a gas. Steam we see typically from our stove and stuff is whitish in color. That's because of the droplets. Dry steam is transparent. You cannot see you can see through it completely.
What temperature is that? Sorry, you said
300 degrees.
300 Celsius. So three times boiling point.
Exactly, and that's why you need the pressure. You also pressurize it so that it doesn't come back. It doesn't reverse flow. So that takes boilers essentially, which is very complicated, very dangerous. There was a boiler explosion, I think, of NTPC, where there was a 10-ton head of the boiler, and when it exploded, that 10-ton head was not found anywhere. And then in the end, it was found about 5-6 kilometers away. So these are very dangerous devices, just so that you get power out of it. Now, what you do, all fair and good, that you've heated water, you got steam, you turned the turbine, all of that. But now the steam has expanded 1,000 times. What do you do with this? Let it into the atmosphere. You'll need a lot of high purity water. So once you have exited your gas, once it's run through a turbine, the water has expanded 1,000 times in volume. So what do you do with this? If you let it into the atmosphere, you'll need a constant supply of water. And not just regular water, you need DM water, demineralized water, which costs a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of energy. So you don't want to do that. Instead, you want to recycle this water as much as possible. In that case, we run it through a condenser, essentially where you lose a lot of heat into the atmosphere. This is the place where we are losing 70% of our efficiency. And water condenses. And once it's condensed, you send it back to the boiler, and then the entire cycle
The whole thing cycles. Yeah.
goes all over again. In ORCs, you typically just replace the water with an organic fluid. So what that enables us is instead of going at 300 degrees Celsius, maybe you could do this at 200 degrees Celsius and utilize more heat. So that is how these cycles work. What we've figured is the entire cycle is great. It's been working for us for 200 years. But the condenser is the killer. It loses 70% of energy right there. So if we could replace that, that would be great. And essentially what this system, the replacement would be doing is somehow convert gaseous water into liquid water. That is essentially the role of a compressor or a condenser. So we've done this using a cycle of catalysts and chemicals, chemical reactions. Wherein first we start with the proprietary working fluid. Water does not really work very well for our system. So we use an extremely polar molecule. And we use polar molecules because they're very easy to liquefy. Phase change is easier. Once you bring the molecules close enough, they attract each other. And therefore, you don't need as much energy to liquefy them.
Okay.
So we start with a proprietary working fluid. That we have the same process goes. We provide external heat to it. It expands. It has the third highest expansion ratio after water and neon. And the coefficient of thermal expansion is a very strong function of temperature. So what that essentially means is not only is the volume increasing of the gas as you provide temperature, the rate at which it expands also increases.
Also faster.
So that's an exponential curve right there. So what these enable us to do is we can extract a lot of energy from the gas and at much higher densities. So that would then translate into much smaller turbines, much more efficient systems, much lesser losses, mechanical losses.
Sorry, just as somebody who is not that informed about this, right? The alternator, so basically the gas passing through the turbine is a function of the pressurization of the gas rather than the temperature, right? Temperature is also a function of the pressurization. You want to increase the pressure at which it's traveling to the turbine. Is that the end goal? So because it's operating at a lower temperature, right? Based on what you described here?
Right. So there are three quantities which are interplay. We all studied inert gas law, right? PV equals Z nRT.
I am not a science graduate. I'm an arts graduate. Please treat me like the idiot I am.
So essentially pressure, temperature and velocity in this case are all interlinked.
Yeah.
If you change one, the other two also will change.
Correct.
So the turbines that we use, they're very, they're on a sort of a tightrope. So depending on what you have or what you can design or what the safety allows you, you can change either the temperature or the velocity or the pressure. So typical power plants today, they play with pressure rather than velocity, because if you have supersonic gas flow, the physics changes and the turbines become very sort of complicated. So we typically go with temperature and pressure. So we don't want very high pressure either, because then they'll start leaking. The seals will have to be very complicated, super expensive also therefore. So it's a very delicate thing. So the power plant I mentioned earlier, supercritical, they are the ones that go at very high pressure, 300 bar, 500 bar. So they're also very expensive, because now the seals and the complicated engineering that goes in high pressure is expensive. So we typically restrict ourselves to about 60 bar pressure and about 300 degrees Celsius. So that technology has been perfected over the years. US had supercritical technology decades ago, and still they've got very few supercritical power plants because it's very expensive. So that is how it goes. And our technology is very similar again. Depends what do you want to do. You want to go at high pressure or high temperature or high velocity. The benefit we have is that the density of our fluid is very high, significantly higher than water. And therefore, with lower velocities, we can still have the same energy being transmitted to the turbine blades. Therefore, we can go at higher temperatures and lower velocities, or lower pressure and higher velocities. So we can play around, and that gives us a lot of flexibility. So depending on what application we have, for example, if you would want to go at grid scale, where our power plant is a 500 megawatt power generator, we
Hmm.
really don't mind going at very high pressure, because then our efficiency is going to be very high. The Carnot efficiency depends on temperature, right? So if you could go at higher pressure, you could also then maintain higher temperatures, and that would be very efficient, the cycle. But the same thing we could not do for a 100 kilowatt power plant in an industrial setting. So if I got a small, medium-sized industry which uses a megawatt of load, and I put a megawatt or a half a megawatt turbine there, that is not a setting where I would want to put a 500 bar pressure engine.
Hmm.
If anything goes wrong, it's going to take the factory and two others on the side with it. So, but that is the reasoning. But the flexibility is what we are really happy about, because with the Rankine cycle, you cannot do that, right? You cannot scale it that high
And
or so.
change these variables so easily.
Exactly. And that is why we've got a bit of ORCs today in the industry. But again, ORCs are very expensive, so they're not widely used in Indian industry especially. So because of this flexibility that we have, we can actually do that now. We can be in these industry, and they can utilize this technology, and not rely on diesel engines. Diesel generators
Right.
can be phased out now because of this flexibility. So this
Wow.
is what we do.
That's like a lot of detail. To be honest, Vijay, like
It
while
requires
we-
some absorption, honestly. It really
Yeah.
does.
actually even to set the stage for what you guys have built and how you built it, I think we just everyone who's just listened has to first understand that you are actually changing the way things have been done for years, right?
200 years. Yeah.
So that's one of the main things, right? You have scientifically cracked a problem, and I'm interested to hear more about the how behind it also, because it's not like other people were not trying. I think energy efficiency has been one of those things which is like a holy grail in power gen. So
True.
everyone, all the way till Elon Musk, is trying it. So
Definitely.
how do we get there? How did you rather get there, and where are you on this journey of your company as well? Because it has to be a viable business. So all of these are questions, but before we do that, I'm going to take a break, let people absorb a little, and come back and talk some more.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cyrus Says, Vijay Subramaniam, founder at Collective Artists Network, talks to Cyrus about talent management in India and all there is to it. On Misconduct, Raghavi and Nisha unravel the doping allegations around various Indian athletes. On Audio Gyan, water activist S. Vishwanath shares with Kedar how wells were designed in earlier times. On The Longest Constitution, Priya tells us about the time when scores of students set themselves on fire to protest against the Mandal Commission. And on Marathi Kirkitun, the Deshmukhs take us on a tour of public baths around the world. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. You can have a list of all of our shows at ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Bank of Baroda and CoinSwitch Kuber.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. Vijay, you've been giving us quite a download. So without asking you to slow down, because, well, we are really interested to get to, how you are literally changing the world. Talk us through a little bit of the, the how did all the science that you just explained to us come together and manifest itself? Because you made it sound so easy. But how did you crack this 200-year-old sort of energy efficiency problem exactly?
So this sort of took us a decade. It's not like we just woke up and we had the solution. It took us a decade of toiling, a lot of research, a lot of trials and errors, but also a lot of luck. So as I mentioned, my dad was like, I was really into science from the beginning. So I always liked it. I guess the thing that helped us rather than others is I was always very interdisciplinary, at least in sciences. So a lot of my friends, when we got into engineering, we were really into this one branch of engineering that we loved, right? If I was into electrical, maybe I was into phasers or whatever it might be. But I was always interested in other engineering. One engineering that a lot of people don't study in India is chemical and aerospace.
Right.
And they were something that always intrigued me. So I guess one aspect was, and where we sort of shine, is that we were all across the place and we knew what chemical engineers do. So a lot of technology that we've done, as I like to say, is we've not reinvented the wheel. We haven't really invented an aircraft. We've just repurposed it, essentially. So that is because we knew what chemical engineers do in their refineries. A lot of Elon Musk works with the batteries and Teslas and space engines and whatnot, but he's not really working with refineries. I'm sure he knows a lot about them, but that's not the thing he really focuses on. And I was interested in this right from my college time. So I had certain ideas that why can't we just use that in our system? Why can't we tweak that for this particular objective
Sure.
as such? So that is this. So I was sort of a jack of all trades when it comes to engineering, but I was really lucky. I had those people who were really good at it. So my friends, they were engineers from Cornell, so they knew their stuff. They knew how to do catalysis. I had a very close friend who was an expert in nanotechnology, studied in Japan. So they knew how to build these molecules. If it was just me doing that, there was no way I could do it. So I had the vision of how things could be, but I was fortunate enough to have people who could actually make that happen. So
Nice.
I think that worked in our favor. And when it comes, we get asked that a lot. Why did others not do it, right? Or Elon Musk has everything. He could have probably come up with this. So I think there's a lot of luck there. I typically throw around a good example of the Wright brothers, right? So when humanity was inventing aircraft, there was another gentleman whose name I've forgotten. He had military funding. He was a graduate from an excellent university, and it was his life goal to invent aircraft. He knew exactly what he wants to do. And there were these cycle mechanics who did not go to college, who did not have funding, and they invented an aircraft. So there's a lot of luck. You could always ask, why did they do it and he did not? But sometimes, I guess it's evolution, right? Sometimes it just happens.
Yeah.
So we were in
Yeah.
the right place at the right time.
Very nice.
I want to just the how I want to kind of get into a little bit more, but from the business angle point of view, right? You mentioned earlier how a big part of the difference in what you all are doing is that you are taking excess heat from other existing processes or existing manufacturers or what have you, and you're using that as part of your process. Like, how does that work from a practical perspective, right? Like, how do you gather that heat? Do you accumulate from multiple factories in a single location and then build a plant? How does this work?
So essentially, what we typically do is right now at the stage we need a certain amount of heat. Obviously, at least 200 kilowatt should be the waste heat from a plant. We essentially put a heat exchanger in the exhaust. Depends what it is. A lot of industries use DG sets. So we can put our heat exchanger on the exhaust of DGs, which typically have an exhaust of about 600 degrees Celsius. So if you imagine 600-degree exhaust is just wasting, we can capture that and give it back as a captive generation to these industries. So that's a good business proposition more than a clean tech thing. It's a good business thing for these companies. The bigger the company, the better it is for them. Then there are a lot of companies where you have process heat, like polymers are one, for example. You may not have a DG set, but you have these processes which are wasteful. Textile is another, paper is another. So we can, right now, the business model is to capture that and generate power at site and give it back to them. And they could either use it as a captive generation or they could sell it to the grid, whatever they feel like.
Okay.
In the longer run, once we've got proper infrastructure, proper technology on the ground and funds. Essentially, the primary thing stopping us is funds. If there is an industrial area like you've got in Navi Mumbai or Pune in Bangalore or Faridabad in Delhi, you could have district heating ducts like you've got in New York and a few other countries in Europe and
Pipes the heat. Yeah.
Pipes, exactly. So we have something called heat pipes where you don't essentially need pumps and fluids going through. They're very efficient to capture heat. So we could use these from various industries, capture heat, and transfer it to one location where we then use the cumulative heat to run the engine. On the other hand, so this is a business model we're still developing. On the other hand, if we can get volumes, we could bring down the cost of these turbines. The best example is a turbocharger. They also use turbines, which is dirt cheap. You'll get a turbocharger for below 20,000 today. So if we could get those volumes, we could bring down the price of the technology. The law of scale jumps in. And in that case, we can have engines of capacity, say 20 kVA, or 15 kVA, 30 kVA. And then you could just install in smaller scale settings or SMEs maybe, or a group of houses maybe. But so far from our understanding of our technology, maybe in future we could develop this further. But so far below 15 kVA and all, that becomes very expensive. That's where our limit lies. Maybe lithium ion is a better option in that case. And the problem comes here, right? The 5 kilowatt system we are developing costs them about 15 crore. So who's going to pay 15 crore for a 5 kilowatt system? So these are the essential issues we have with scale.
Interesting. Just to kind of like help me kind of put you into existing types of companies that are out there, right? Are you a technology provider for power plants, or are you like a company that creates captive power plants for different industry, or is it like some mix of the two of these, or like you get what I'm saying? I mean, I know that there are these two and maybe you don't fall into either camp neatly, right? But generally, I've heard in power there are these two spaces that exist.
True. So we are a hybrid company essentially. So long term, once we got enough funds, we got proven technology, we want to be a utilities company, much like a power plant today, where we develop our own technology, put our system, our power plants on the grid, where then we interact with the power grid. We just deal with the electricity, that's all.
Right.
But that requires a lot of capital, which we do not have at this stage. So we diversify into a second sort of a model, wherein we are building our power plants at scale up to 5 megawatts, and we sell it to the companies, the industrial units, as waste heat recovery units. So the current industry, they have their own waste heat. Instead of you giving them a source of power, you just install it over your system, whichever thing you want to use as source of heat, and that will then give you power back. And that is a simple business model. You give us one-time capital to buy the engine. It's yours. It's going to pay itself back within a payback period of about 2 years, 3 years, and everyone's happy. So that gives us a steady cash flow.
Yeah, it's harder to do like a SaaS model in the real world.
Very difficult,
To go subscription first. It's not like I can spin up more servers. So that's definitely the case. But Vijay, you've already cracked. So obviously you've cracked the tech. You know the massive science behind it. You said there was you have like a lot of proprietary tech which went into all of this. Right. Then you're on the side. You're now obviously doing the business model. You're raising funds. When did this, now as entrepreneur in this space in India, right? Your original vision was to power that village, and for that, obviously, you went to the government. You said, and the government didn't really, pick this up. But the government is trying to promote a lot of clean tech sort of initiatives. So, what's the reality of, the prospects for a business like yours? I mean, speaking to other entrepreneurs who might be listening to this, other people in this space, like what is the reality? You can tell us that, from a venture funding standpoint to government support to real world implementation. Where are you today?
So, like all good things in life, it is difficult. It's not easy, unfortunately. I wish it were. But exactly as how you put it, it's extremely better now. When we started off, had the government taken our idea, we would have never started this company. We would be happy going someplace. But
Mm.
at that time, it's not like they weren't interested. The processes were too lengthy. We had to go to IIT Roorkee to get it validated, and a lot of validations required. Then you would talk to their engineers. You'd wait for a month, and this is when I had to fly all the way to Delhi to meet them as a student. We dropped our classes to go there to talk to them, and then they were not interested. They wanted us to go to IIT Roorkee to validate. It just does not work that way.
Yeah.
Fortunately, now things have changed. In fact, we are having this meeting, this recording today because tomorrow I am meeting a person from the government who is extremely excited to push our technology.
Wow,
And
nice.
so much so that the military has been very helpful with us. They've been promoting us. They've been trying to test our technology on the field. So the government definitely is excited about green tech, about technologies that are sustainable. They are willing to hear you out. They are willing to sort of put it on test to see if this is a viable option. Obviously, it's a little slow. We would still want the process to be faster, but it's definitely way better than it used to be back then. The one problem we have with the government, though, is pretty much with everyone that we are very sort of narrow. The vision is very narrow. So when you talk
Mm.
about green tech, so we've got these standard poster childs, right? Solar, wind, lithium ion. That's just about it. Maybe EVs. So
Mm.
the problem is, if you look at the ground reality, the price fall that we were having for both lithium as well as PV, they begin flatting out. So
Yeah.
they're getting flat now. So if they had to solve the problem, or if they were the solution, they would have already solved it. And the thing we need to understand is there's a vast array of other technologies which have the potential, but they don't have the money right now. And this
Mm.
is something Americans have understood. So if you look at Bill Gates also, Vinod Khosla, they've funded a lot of these energy storage startups. And they understand that you need storage. And they're not lithium ion, they're beyond that.
Mm.
And so does the government. We had the pleasure of meeting the governor of Colorado 2 years back. And they were within 15 minutes, they were sold on the idea. They
Mm.
offered us a lot of incentives to move our company to Denver, and
Mm.
NREL was interested. So that level of immediate enthusiasm is still not there in India. So if you go with lithium ion, it makes a lot of sense to them. They know what they're talking about. But when you talk about long duration storage, they talk about things like, oh, the price of power is coming to 2 rupees. How will you survive? So they don't understand the larger implication that the more solar and wind you have on the grid, the more difficult it is to have a functional grid.
Yeah.
And this is something Americans understand because they're already having that problem. The duck curve and all of these issues are already there in Californian grid, Arizona, all of these places. And India is like 20 years behind the curve. So
Yeah.
that becomes a little bit of a problem, mega explaining the issue that we're solving. Uh, so unless you're talking to people like BPCL or NTPC, they sort of get it, but others have a it's an uphill task explaining it to them. But once you've done that, then again, fortunately, the environment is good enough where then they pick up speed. So on the third aspect of the VC ecosystem, the same story. A lot of VCs are interested in green tech and clean tech sustainability, but the energy storage and power generation is typically tough tech. It requires a lot of patient capital. A typical engine of ours comes for more than 2-3 crores. So raising funds which are adequate is extremely difficult. So the same issues we've had, and therefore we've focused all our energy in strategic partnership or strategic funds or large companies like Tata's and Escorts helping us in kind to develop the
Mm.
technology. Maybe they could learn a few things about these things. So that's how we've survived. And I believe, much like the American way, you need governmental support in this area to sort of trigger this plethora of startups in tough tech. So starting an app is significantly easier and but starting a turbine company. So we had the fortune of being incubated at IIM Bangalore, and we had the same option from Tata Trust. But we did not choose Tata Trust exactly for that reason, that the amount of money they can offer us also, we can't buy a turbine blade, forget the entire turbine.
Right.
So it defeats the entire purpose, and there's no point having investors on board when they're of no use to you and you are of no use to them either.
Right.
So the American ecosystem, for that matter, even the European ones, all are competitors. They're all funded by Bill Gates, by Vinod Khosla, by the government of US, English government, Swedish government. So you definitely need government intervention so that the science is developed. Once the science is there, then the technology can be developed. Then law of scale picks up. It becomes so much more easier.
How far are you from being able to say the science is there? I mean, granted that it's always evolving, but still, nonetheless.
It is, exactly. So it is evolving. It's always evolving concept. But we've finally cracked the science. That's why, in fact, we are having this podcast. We were semi-stealth until now, until 2016, 17. Now that the science is solved, we are starting to deploy them in the industry as a version 1. So thankfully, again, to answer the previous question, we've had these forward-thinking corporates also who are interested in a system that is not the best it can be, and still they're investing in this and they're buying these equipments. And these are version 1. We are learning systems engineering, for example. Although the chemistry is there, the systems engineering is now being built. The AI and ML layer is being put over these systems. So these are happening. Science took almost a decade. Now we are getting into the next phase of the science, using nanotechnology to better our molecules. So it's ongoing.
Impressive.
But the engineer in us has to be curbed, right? We want to do that right now, but there's no money for it. So now we are sort of into the commercialization part of it, where we want to deploy these, get a steady cash flow, and then get that into the R&D again. So the science does take a lot of effort. You get a lot of heat because of that.
That's the nice plug you did there. Vijay, this is, well, I mean, I thought there'll be more, we can continue, like I said, demystifying everything that you're doing, or distilling it, whichever, adjective you want to use. But there's, I think this is fascinating, first of all, right? It opens up a whole new section of science and technology, which is we heard not too many people are doing. Definitely, probably one of the few people even in this domain in the whole country. As a small people section of that technology audience listening to you today, I'm sure a lot of people are interested in learning more. So where can they go to find out more about your company, to find out more about the kind of job you're doing, the kind of roles you have, or just get more acquainted with the science? Because I think a large part is also going to be educating the public that, hey, this is serious and this is real, right? Instead of it just being for IITs and IIMs to write case studies on. So yeah, where do they go here as closing notes? Where can people reach you and share some contacts?
So in fact, we do believe in democratizing the science of everything, like just the Tesla way. It's better, more people know about these things, they can use their own creativity. So we are in the process of having our website up. So a lot of science would be talked about on our website. So you could definitely, I think by end of Jan, it should be up. And that would be a great place to start on the chemistry, the energy storage concept itself. Otherwise, Instagram is definitely one place where we have been active recently.
Nice.
We were semi-stealth, so we weren't really, we didn't really have a public face, so to speak. But these two are a great way to start. We hope to have our Facebook page also up and running. It exists, but it's sort of in a state of coma right now. But Instagram and our website definitely is the place to go. Where you can
you're reachable on like LinkedIn or on Twitter?
Definitely. LinkedIn is definitely there. I'm there on Twitter. The company is also there on Twitter, but very rarely. You can reach the company or me on LinkedIn for sure.
Awesome. We'll put those details in the plug.
I'd also like to really quickly plug our show and ask you all that, hey, if you're listening to this and you enjoyed this conversation with Vijay, please do recommend it to somebody. It's really helpful to us when people spread by word of mouth. And also, wherever you're listening, drop us a rating, drop us a review. Wherever you're listening, that also is always helpful. You can reach out to Shiladitya or myself on social media. And remember, this show is now on YouTube. We do the full video versions as well, besides the audio versions that you're listening to on all your various platforms.
Yes, Vijay, I mean, fascinating stuff. Like I said, I'm waiting for that website to go up. I can really digest some of this more holistically. And of course, the little bit of the, old school physics inquisitiveness definitely got rejigged today. I know
I'm glad that is the
Rankine
intention.
cycle and whole bunch of other things to definitely Wikipedia after this. Nice. But thank you so much, Vijay. This was amazing. Thank you so much for doing this.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me over. Thank you so much.
Amazing.
Have you ever wondered where the business world is headed? How the ways in which we create, market, and sell to consumers will evolve? Or if we'll ever go back to wearing pants while working? For answers to all of this and more, tune into Advertising is Dead with me, Varun Dugirala. Every Tuesday, as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers from across business, media, marketing, and beyond. You can catch all episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IBM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from.